Hey everybody, it's Hexa, and today's video is going to be a little bit different from what I've put up on my channel so far. Today we're going to be talking about mental health, and specifically, it's kind of a comparison video between depression and anxiety. Before I jump into this, I'm just gonna go ahead and apologize for the drilling noises. In China, it is basically a status symbol to be able to have enough money to pay people to drill holes in your house for no reason for months and months on end. So both of my neighbors on both sides of my house are doing some kind of reparations, and I'm ready to murder everybody and burn their houses down, but I won't, because I'm not that kind of crazy. Anyways, I will try to sort out some of the drilling noises in editing, but I'm sure you're still going to be able to hear some of it. But anyways, let's just jump into this. I'm going to start off with a disclaimer. I'm not a mental health professional, and if you're dealing with depression, anxiety, or any other mental disorder, or you think you have a mental disorder of any kind, you should definitely contact a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a therapist or a counselor, somebody who is actually qualified to help you with that. Also, while I may be generalizing in this video and talking about it as if this is how every sufferer of these disorders experiences things, do please keep in mind that this is based on my own experience mostly, or how I have come to think of these disorders. For some background info, I have had depression for almost 10 years now. I probably started showing symptoms around the time I was 10, and now I'm 19, so yeah, almost 10 years. I had symptoms of, suicidal thoughts, self-harm, loneliness, hopelessness, all that kind of stuff. So I would say that I've had depression for quite a long time. And anxiety has been around in my life for about the last 2 years or so, and has gotten particularly bad in the last 3 to 6 months. So anxiety is a lot more new to me, and that is part of the reason why I'm having a lot of trouble dealing with it, because as is probably obvious, when you have a new mental disorder just popping up into your life, it's not a lot of fun. And, as my therapist says, it is an anomaly, so I'm definitely having a hard time with that at the moment. The reason why I wanted to make this video is just because I've been kind of having some self-reflective thoughts and moments. I've been thinking about the experience of depression versus the experience of anxiety, and how they differ from each other, how they affect me on a day-to-day basis. And I just thought this would be an interesting video to make. It would be informative to some people, and yeah, this is, I guess, just how those two things affect me, the similarities, the differences, and some of my thoughts on that. First, I'm going to be talking about similarities, and number one is suicidal thoughts. Both depression and anxiety can trigger those thoughts of, I don't want to live like this isn't me, I can't deal with this forever. I would say that self-harm and suicidal thoughts are more prevalent in depression, but I also get them with anxiety, not so much in terms of actually planning it out or actually wanting to do it, but more just like thinking, what happens if I keep having anxiety 5 years from now, 10 years from now? I don't want to live my life with anxiety, and, what if I just killed myself so I didn't have to deal with it anymore? Which is not a fun thought, it's not a good thought, it's not how you should approach these things, but, when you're having a really shit day, you can't really help it sometimes. Number two is inactivity. When you have depression, your inactivity is as a result of lack of motivation and feelings of hopelessness. You don't really care about anything, you don't really think about your future just seems dark and dull and pointless. And so when you have depression, you don't go out, you don't do things, and you have a lot of inactivity. You experience inactivity because you just lack the motivation to do things. Anxiety is different, and it's a lot more frustrating than depression because, when you have depression, you don't really care, so there's nothing to be frustrated about, there's nothing to be disappointed in yourself for. But when you have anxiety, your inactivity is more as a result of your self-defense/avoidance strategies. When you notice certain events and certain things, situations, places, activities that cause anxiety, you start to avoid those activities so that you don't have another anxiety attack or panic attack, because nobody likes to feel that way. Nobody likes to feel anxious. Nobody likes to feel panicky. And it's only natural to want to avoid things that make you feel that way. The third similarity is difficulties in relationships. I don't mean just romantic relationships. This applies to friendships, family relationships, and any relationship and interaction really that you have with people in your everyday life. When you're depressed, you feel very physically and emotionally drained, so it's almost like you spend so much of your energy just living and just existing that you don't have any energy left over to spend on other people. You don't really want to deal with people's problems. You don't really want to talk to people. It's just kind of like, you know, you just feel tired of life and people and everything, and that really causes you to just not want to hang out. This is especially sad in the case of romantic relationships, because this is something that I've experienced when I've been in a relationship with someone and I cared about them, but I was having a particularly bad phase with my depression, and, you know, even though I liked that person, I just felt frustrated with them. I didn't want to see them. They were draining me, and, you know, I just had those days when I didn't want to kiss them, I didn't want to see them, I didn't want to talk to them, and it's really sad because you care about the person that you're dating, even if you do have depression, but sometimes depression gets the best of you and you just kind of want to reject them and you have nothing to do with them, and yeah, it's not a fun feeling. Anxiety also affects relationships, but in a different way. It's not so much that you are so drained that you don't have energy to give to them. It's more that usually hanging out with people, spending time with people requires going places and doing things. I have generalized anxiety, not social anxiety, so I don't really mind being around people. I would be very happy to throw a house party with like 30 people in my own house and I would be fine. My anxiety is more relating to going out and being out of my house, because my house is my safe space, and as soon as I'm out of it, I feel out of control. I feel like I'm not safe. So anxiety causes problems in relationships because you're not really in the headspace where you feel like you can go out and visit people. I know I've been having a lot of trouble recently going to my boyfriend's house, and, you know, I do push myself to do it, but sometimes I just can't if I'm having a particularly bad anxiety day, because I just really don't like being out of my house. It's very frustrating because you want to spend time together, you want to put effort into your relationships and your friendships, but the anxiety factor just makes it so much more difficult to push yourself to do it. So those were the three similarities that I thought of between depression and anxiety. I'm sure there are a lot more, but those are just the three that I have noticed a lot personally. Next, I'm going to be talking about the differences. I've also got 3 written down for this, so let's just jump into it. The first one is motivation. Depression causes a lack of motivation. You get feelings of hopelessness, not caring, you just don't want to do things. You don't have the energy to do them, you don't want to do them, you don't care about them. One of the big questions that psychologists will ask you is, do you find pleasure in doing things that you normally would enjoy? And in the case of a depressed person, they would answer no. So basically, depression just really strips you of your passions, your happiness, your anything that you enjoy, really. It's not enjoyable anymore. Your feelings towards that activity are numbed and nothing really seems worth the effort. People who suffer from anxiety don't have that loss of motivation, or at least in my case, I have not experienced that. Again, this is why anxiety is so much more frustrating than depression, because when you have anxiety, you do care, and you do have your passion, and you do have your motivation, and you do want to do things. The want is there. It's the ability that is hindered. You crave activities, you crave doing the things that you enjoy, but as soon as you leave your house and go out to actually do them, that fight or flight response starts kicking in, you start sweating, you start panicking, you start feeling anxious, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know what, this isn't really worth this feeling. I myself am a singer. I love singing, I love performing, and yet the last time that I was on a stage was in November. I've had plenty of opportunities since then. I've been asked to fill in when people have canceled last minute. I've been given all kinds of opportunities to perform, but I've been too anxious to do it. So to summarize that, when you have depression, you don't care, so you don't do things. But when you have anxiety, you do care, but you still don't do things. Number 2 is the physical versus the psychological or the emotional. Depression is more psychological, whereas anxiety is more physical. I don't want to confuse anybody. Both of these are mental disorders. They both have both physical and psychological parts to them. I just personally feel that depression comes more from my head, whereas anxiety affects me more physically. So depression does cause physical fatigue, but I think it's a lot more centered in psychological fatigue. You have a lot more dark thoughts, suicidal thoughts, and you generally spend a lot more time just sitting alone in your room, feeling hopeless, feeling lonely, thinking about suicide, and just having bad thoughts. On the flip side, anxiety can be triggered by thoughts and can be controlled by thoughts. You can prevent having panic attacks or anxiety attacks by thinking in a different way, but it does not always help. Sometimes it just gets the best of you, and anxiety comes with a whole array of different physical symptoms. When you have anxiety, you can experience fatigue simply as a result of you're burning a lot more calories and a lot more energy every time you're getting those heart palpitations, and people with anxiety tend to have some physical twitches. Like, I know that if I'm feeling anxious, I can't sit still in my chair. I have to constantly be moving and squirming just to feel like I'm on the go. I'm somehow moving. I really don't like being in one place for a long time. I've written down all of the symptoms because there's like so many different things that happen to your body. I have to have them on a list because otherwise I'm going to forget something. So there's sweating, there's racing or irregular heartbeat, you have difficulty breathing, dizziness, nausea, and in some cases, quite often, diarrhea as well. I know that sounds crazy, like how can anxiety cause diarrhea, but it's because when you're having an anxiety attack, your digestive system stops working properly. It's not fun, but yeah, your digestion does get quite messed up by having anxiety attacks and panic attacks. In extreme cases or during panic attacks, people can also experience fainting or vomiting. Fortunately, this is something that has never happened to me, but it can happen. The vomiting is just unpleasant. I feel like that would just make the situation so much worse, and I would hate for that to happen to me. The fainting is also terrible and sucks a lot, but you know, at least it's less gross. And also, fainting is actually your body's natural response to calming you down. I know that sounds crazy, but when you faint, you are down on the ground. Hopefully you're lying down, you're in a horizontal position, and your heart is on the same level as your brain, which allows your body to kind of reboot, reoxygenate your brain, and calm you down. Some kids, like young kids, will have this thing where they throw tantrums where they hold their breath. It's not a disorder, it's not a problem that you need to take your kid to like a child psychologist for. Some kids do this, and they will hold their breath until they faint, which seems really, really scary to parents, but actually the fainting is the body's natural response because your body is like, well, you're doing something that's not good for you and you shouldn't be doing, so it makes you faint, or it makes kids faint so that they will continue breathing normally, because as soon as they've fainted, they can't consciously hold their breath anymore. So I would assume that's why people can faint when they're having a panic attack, because when you are panicking, your breathing becomes very irregular and you're not oxygenating yourself properly, which is why your body is kind of like, yeah, no, we're not doing this, and it's just like out like a light, and then you can resume breathing normally. So the third and final difference between depression and anxiety is going out, and how that kind of works, how that helps or does not help. In the case of depression, going out and doing things can really, really help. I cannot stress this enough. If you are depressed and you've been hiding in your room, not doing anything, not talking to anyone, just binge watching Netflix or YouTube or whatever, and just being by yourself for a long time, go out. When you are depressed, you don't want to go out, you don't want to interact with people, it's just like, fuck this shit, I ain't doing it, I don't want to do it, whatever. And I get that. I know. I've been through those phases where I have no motivation and I don't want to do anything because fuck the world. But trust me, I can promise you that if you just go out and do things, it will make you feel better in the long run. When you have depression, you're unmotivated to go out and do things, but there's no fear involved. You're not afraid of going out, you just don't feel like it. But if you work up the strength to just say, okay, fine, I'll go, and even if you go begrudgingly, even if you don't really feel like it, and you're kind of like rolling your eyes at your friends for dragging you out to do whatever, you will feel better. It really helps you out of your rut. You're spending time with people, so you're not getting those feelings of loneliness. It's an opportunity to remember that people do care about you, because if you're spending some time with your friends, it's like, okay, well, all these people do actually want to be around me and they do actually care about me. Plus the activity, both the physical activity and the mental stimulation, can release some of those feel-good hormones that you probably really, really need. So yes, for someone dealing with depression who is going through a serious bout of inactivity because of it, I cannot stress this enough. Just do it. Just go. Just do something. Go to the mall with your friends. Go out. Don't drink alcohol. That's a bad idea, because I'm going to talk about this in another video, but alcohol is really unstable as a substance. Sometimes you go out and you drink alcohol and you feel really, really happy and you're happy drunk or crazy drunk and you start dancing on the pool table, but other times you start crying, you get really triggered, you get really dark and depressed. So I would generally just avoid alcohol if you're dealing with any kind of mental disorder, because you never know how it's going to affect you, and it's just best not to invite that kind of emotional instability into your life. Now for going out as a person with anxiety. Anxiety sufferers find it harder to just go out than people with depression. People with depression aren't going to want to go out, but you know, there's no fear factor involved for depression, so it's kind of okay. But when you have anxiety, it's not as easy to just go out, because you do have that fear factor and you do have to really mentally prepare yourself to deal with some of those really uncomfortable feelings of anxiety and panic. As I said before, the motivation or the want is there. You want to do things, you want to go out, unlike someone with depression. But as soon as you do step outside your house, you start feeling confronted by these physical symptoms and those anxious thoughts, and it can make it really, really difficult to actually go through with it. I cannot count the number of times that I've left my house intending to go somewhere, walked like 200 meters or halfway to the metro station, and then been like, yeah, nope, not today, and just turned right back around and gone home. I will say that even if you have anxiety, braving those fears and still going out and doing things will also benefit you. So technically this isn't a really big difference, because going out and doing things can benefit people both with depression and anxiety. You're facing your fears, you're challenging yourself, and that builds up a tolerance for those scary activities or those scary situations. So, you know, slowly with time, you get a little bit better at going out and doing things. However, one thing to keep in mind is that everybody has their limits. I don't know how bad your anxiety is, but if you're having a really, really shitty day in terms of anxiety, do not overexert yourself. Don't push yourself too far, because I wouldn't want to have a panic attack. You wouldn't want to have a panic attack. Nobody wants to have a panic attack. So if you feel like it's just one of those days that is not your day and you're probably gonna freak the fuck out, just don't. Just stay home, it's okay. The world will not end if you skip a day of school or work. It's fine. With that being said, if you are having a particularly bad anxiety day and you're gonna avoid a really big challenge, it is always a good idea to try a smaller challenge to replace that. So maybe if you were gonna go to the mall or the supermarket, but you're too anxious to go go to the corner store instead. Don't stray too far from home, but still try to do something that day so that you maybe brave your fears just a little bit. But yeah, that was about it for this depression versus anxiety comparison video. I have another video on mental health coming up. I wrote down some of my top tips for dealing with anxiety, and I'm really, really excited to make that video. I think it's going to be quite helpful, or I hope it's going to be really helpful to people. If you guys have any more questions about depression or anxiety, please feel free to leave them down in the comments. If there's another video you would like me to make on this topic, also let me know. Suggestions are always good. It's, you know, it's hard being a YouTuber and coming up with content all the time, so if you guys would like any videos on a similar topic related to this, please let me know as well. Again, as I said in the beginning of the video, if you are dealing with any kind of mental disorder, I would seriously recommend that you go and seek professional help. I really, really hope that you're in a country where you can actually do that and afford that, because I know America doesn't give a shit about your mental health, because it's much more important to be bombing Afghanistan. Sure. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more. And you can donate to my Patreon down below to support me and my channel. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!